lot of mental acuity. You figured it out. You were there for a while, but you figured it out really well. And Chad understands that the best way to secure a border is to listen to the men and the women serving on the front lines. And he got that right from the beginning, as I did.
And we're always interested in speaking with folks that have worked directly with President Trump. And there's no better person than Rick Manning, who is the president of Americans for Limited Government. He worked directly with President Trump on trade issues during President Trump's run for office, and also worked on the transition team in the Labor Department. Welcome, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. So we're going to talk about something a little bit different with you today. I understand, and I've certainly been a victim of this, and I'm sure Amanda and many other people have had as well, is that from what I understand, medical procedures today, people are getting, I guess, bills well after the fact for thousands of dollars that they didn't expect, and that is really impacting people's lives and the cost of medical care?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called surprise medical billing, and what happens is, you go to the doctor, you go into the hospital, and and one of the people who's used is not in the network of the insurance company, and so the insurer will say, well, we're only paying X amount, and the person who provides the service has said, well, it costs more than that to provide the service, and as a result, patients end up getting a bill that they didn't expect to get. And it's a challenge that we're facing. 1 in 5 Americans has apparently, according to a survey, has experienced this, and so it's a challenge. And Congress is trying to figure out how to deal with it. And there's some very specific challenges in terms of how Congress is, what they're looking at. We have a bill by Senator Alexander from Tennessee, for instance, which would lay the groundwork for socialized medicine. It's a disaster, and we have to make certain that approach, the one-size-fits-all pricing approach, doesn't become the law of the land.
It kind of reminds me, you hear these commercials all the time about getting people out of their timeshares because of these unexpected expenses. That's what it reminds me of. But my question is, this surprise medical billing, it seems to really only be a heightened conversation within the last, 5 years or so. Was it worse under Obamacare than it was prior to ACA, or what's the reason for that?
Well, Obamacare changed everything. They basically made it so insurers had to provide coverage for a wide variety of different services, and insurers were essentially limited in how much money they could charge. So the squeeze went down to the healthcare providers, and the healthcare providers were told, we don't care how much money it costs you to do this. This is how much you're going to get paid. And so this all does flow from Obamacare and the mistake of Obamacare, and the failure of the Republicans to get rid of Obamacare for that matter. And so now we're dealing with the fallout of Obamacare with this pricing model where the health insurers are not allowed to have prices that reflect what the costs are, and they're now squeezing the providers in terms of how much will be paid for different services. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I just want to make it clear, health insurance is a way of paying for health care, but it isn't health care. Health care is provided to you by doctors, nurses, hospitals, anesthesiologists, and those kind of guys. And in a place like California, where they have a one-size-fits-all system, it is driving the healthcare providers out of business, and where they're not providing services for people anymore, or moving out of state because they can't make the profit actually providing the services. So it's disastrous in California. It's been tried for 3 years. There's a better way of doing it, and that is to create an arbitration system where the healthcare providers and the health insurers can argue about what the cost should be and what the payment should be between themselves, and decide about it between themselves, and have a federal arbiter make the decision. That's a far more efficient system. It doesn't drive providers out of business. It's been tried in New York and it works. And rather than the one size fits all that lays the pathway for socialized medicine, it's a far better way to go.
Yeah, Rick, I mean, this is a really important issue, especially when we're talking about it from a political standpoint with the election coming up. We've talked about this. I've had you on a couple of panels, including last year at CPAC. We had a rollicking time together. When we talk about it from a political standpoint, Republicans, they have this medical bill ban, this surprise medical bill ban. I guess that's in the book somewhere. Are they going to be able to push this through to get voted on by Trump by year end, maybe before the election?
Well, we're going to have a big fight about health care in middle of May, rather. All the funding for the Obamacare programs come up all at the same time at the end of May, or middle of May. It's been planned that way by Speaker Pelosi in the funding bills that we just passed. So this will come up in the next month and a half. It's going to be a battle royale, and it would be a massive mistake for the Republicans to say, gee, we want to pass something to say we did something about this, if what they pass is a pathway to socialized medicine. I've set up a website called stopsocializedmedicine.org, stopsocializedmedicine.org, where people can go and they can find out more about it and contact their congressmen and senators against this one-size-fits-all billing system.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have firsthand knowledge of what socialized medical care looks like because I married a Canadian, and it's not so great up there. So to help me have a more in-depth and informed conversation with people on the other side, what are some of the talking points of people who oppose this?
Well, first of all, it doesn't reflect regional differences in healthcare providing. And it doesn't cost the same amount of money to provide healthcare in New York City as it does in Casper, Wyoming. And to try to put the same price system, the same price for that medical care into Wyoming that exists in New York City it doesn't make any sense. It's nonsensical. And that's what this would do, the one-size-fits-all pricing. So that's the most obvious point. Everybody can acknowledge that doesn't make any sense. And ironically, the people who will be most hurt by this are rural communities, because a lot of the costs for healthcare, because they don't have the economies of scale, a lot of costs of healthcare is they really will be denied those services. We find in California as rural communities are losing their healthcare providers. Second thing, and this is just instrumental, but most people make this mistake. Health insurance is not health care. Health insurance is just paying for it. And the Obamacare system screwed up the health insurance system and made it a basically a dictated system of what has to be provided and the like. And if we really want to fix health care, we need to rip Obamacare out by the roots. Certainly, if you want to have pre-existing conditions covered, figure out a way to do that. But we need to reinstate the market principles into the healthcare system so the prices begin to make sense, and it more meets what the market needs are rather than anything else. And thirdly, the president has rightfully put transparency into hospital pricing, and so hospitals will have to put their pricing for different services up on the web. So if you're making a choice in terms of healthcare and going to a hospital, you'll be able to check what the costs are in advance and be able to control your own healthcare costs.
Yeah, Rick, that certainly opens up the competitive market for people that want to do hospital shopping. We certainly need to see that with health insurance as well by basically just, bringing down the state monopolies that they have. But let me ask you, because you really piqued my interest here when we talk about this bill that the Republicans are pushing through. That's headed, I believe, you said Lamar Alexander. Yeah, Lamar Alexander is a conservative. He's a Republican. He was the governor of Tennessee, for crying out loud. But he wants to push through this bill that has some form of a single payer situation that is involved. Aren't we now basically just dancing on the Democrat and the socialist dance floor when we're talking about single payer?
I don't think a majority of the Republicans like that, but yes, Lamar Alexander is the sponsor in the Senate, and quite honestly, a lot of the momentum is around the idea of we've got to do something, and so why not this? And that's what we're pushing back against. There are good alternatives. Quite honestly, the best alternatives are not being discussed, but there are alternatives other than creating a one-size-fits-all process, and that's what I'm hoping people will do by going to stopsocializedmedicine.org, is be able to contact their congressman and try to impress upon them that this is not an alternative that's acceptable, and for them to look for other alternatives, particularly the arbitration system, which will help protect both the providers and the insurers.
And Richard, a few minutes ago, you brought up pre-existing conditions. Talk about dancing on the Democrats' dance floor. To me, and maybe I'm just a savage jerk, but I don't understand why insurance companies should be compelled to cover pre-existing conditions unless it is a transfer from a different insurance company, because to me that's like my house burning down and then me going and getting homeowners insurance and expecting a payout from the company. To me, as a business-minded person, that just doesn't make sense.
Well, I've agreed with that position throughout. The challenge we have is the president has said there's going to be a pre-existing conditions protection within any bill he's going to sign that's an overhaul of the healthcare system, and so that position has no longer is going to survive. And so now we have to figure out how to do it the right way. And I agree with you that insurers should incorporate some of those costs into their system, and quite honestly, it's very difficult if somebody's got diabetes and they haven't gone and had insurance, and now they're going to go on an insurance program and expect the insurance program to pay for all the medicines and all the treatments. That's grossly unfair to the insurance company. It's grossly unfair to the other ratepayers, and so it's pre-existing conditions are a real problem. But I will just say, unless there's a political sea change, that's going to be baked into the cake in any kind of overall medical deal. And to me, what we have to do in this May time period is deal strictly in a narrow cast way with the surprise medical billing and win that battle, and not allow it to be expanded to Nancy Pelosi's playing field, which is the broader health care reform, because now the Republicans don't have a good answer. And over the next 6 to 9 months, they better develop one, because if they become the majority party, which I think they will, this is going to be job one when they come back in 2021.
Rick Manning, everybody check out stopsocializedmedicine.org. Greatly appreciate you taking the time, sir. I wish we can go on, because I've certainly got some thoughts about the pre-existing conditions. As my ex-wife, who I'm very close with, has had cancer for 10 years, and it's broken us. So, there definitely needs to be some answers for that by the Republicans as well. But find Rick at Americans for Limited Government. Great to have you back on, and see you again real soon, Rick. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. And also, we are very happy to bring on and returning to the show, we have Natalie Harp, who is an advisor to President Trump. She is with the Falkirk Center and an ambassador. And welcome back, Natalie. How are you?